Fortnite is an online game that our own Bob Hoos called part shooting game, part Minecraft. Do you remember that, Mr. Hoos?
I do. That was the first version of Minecraft. I mean, Fortnite.
Yeah. And technically, the game is absolutely free. That's right. Players can hop into Fortnite and shoot and build and scavenge to their heart's content without paying a dime. So why do experts say that Fortnite will earn close to $6 billion this year? Mm-hmm. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Plugged In Show. I'm Paul Asay. Today, we'll be talking about the loony, lucrative world of microtransactions and in-game purchases, why game makers love them, why many gamers hate them, and what families should know about them. And after that, we'll turn our attention to Christmas. That is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, a new movie coming out this weekend based on a great book by Barbara Robinson. I had a chance to talk with the film's director and producer, so we'll be hearing from them a little bit later on. But now, let's turn our attention to games and all the stuff we can buy in them. And to help me do that is Bob Hoos, Emily Chow, and all the way from California for the first time on the podcast, Adam Holtz. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey, Paul.
So I want you to think back to your childhood, or maybe not even so far back. Even your adulthood would be just fine, too. But tell me about your church and what it does at Christmas. Does your church have a particular beloved event that they do every single year?
Does this have to tie into games in any way?
It does not have to tie into games.
Well, good.
No.
Well, I'll jump in there, but the first thing that comes to mind is not necessarily something that my church did or one of my churches did. Mm-hmm. But when I used to be out traveling and touring and performing in churches and things of that nature, we would often work with churches that would do special Christmas programs. Mm. And some of them were really, really good at creating these big, expansive experiences. Even smaller churches, they tried to have something showy, something splashy that they could bring the public in at Christmas, because a lot of times people wouldn't step into church except on special occasions or special holidays, you know? Mm-hmm. And so they'd do something really splashy. It reminded me, and the first thing that came to mind was a story that I had heard about this one. It was a rather small church. And a friend of mine had been working with them on their program, and they wanted to do a scene at the end where Jesus rises into the air at the very end of their pageant. And
the baby Jesus?
No. This would be the.
I was thinking, is there a levitating baby?
This was the whole story of Jesus.
I was freaking out just for that.
It's such a fun fact for you in a minute.
That would have been an interesting choice, actually. No, this was the adult Jesus.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. They did the entire pageant. I mean, it wasn't just the birth of Christ.
Okay, so the whole.
Yeah, it was the big story, and but they had this elevating Jesus, but they didn't know anything about, Hollywood technique on flying someone up. And so they had one cable attached to his back.
Oh, no.
Now, the problem, in rehearsal, it all went great. But in performance, somebody, because they had a crowd of people there, looking skyward, somebody nudged him and he started to turn.
Oh.
So...
There's no way to stop him.
No, once it starts moving, and they actually slowed his ascension down because they weren't sure what was going to happen, because of the cable. And then all of a sudden he spun back around the other way. And the reason I even bring this up is because
imagine trying to keep a straight face for that.
Right. After that performance,
a Jesus face.
After that performance, the church became locally known by the local residents as the Church of the Spinning Christ.
Wow.
So
I don't think any of the rest of us need to go after that story.
No, but I mean, basically that's one of those lessons where you say, okay, either do it right or just keep it simple.
Just keep it simple. Yeah.
So I have some fun stories for you. 3, to be exact.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm super cheating today. And part of it is Hoos's fault. You guys were talking about the floating baby Jesus. So fun fact, my first performance on stage was as the baby Jesus in a Christmas pageant.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
I was 6 months old.
That's so cute, and I'm
think
sure
I
you
was-
remember every single minute of
I
it.
think I was the only baby in the church at the time, so that's probably why it happened. It was a small church. But yeah, there are some family photos buried in an album at my mom's house that
And I suppose it's possible that the baby Jesus could have had red hair. It's possible.
I mean, and I did. I had a shock of red hair when I was born. So, I mean,
Shock.
A shock.
that's a fun word. So there's my first fun fact. My second one. Okay. So initially, when I heard your question, I thought of my childhood. So I went to, I grew up as a military kid, so there was just the one chapel on post. So you could go to the Protestant service, the Catholic service, or the gospel service. We usually went to the Protestant service. And but they did this every year. There was one guy in this church who could
There's
play
always one.
the saw. He could play the saw.
Oh.
Like he would take a violin bow and he would take a saw, like the saw that
Yeah.
I've seen
chop
somebody
and-
play a song.
yeah, no, like a,
It actually has a really pretty sound, I think.
It's creepy. It's like a ghost is playing these Christmas tunes, basically. That's what it sounds like to
Oh,
me.
gotcha.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
so we had some kind of spooky Christmases, but he did it every year, and
Every year.
it was always to mixed reviews. Like some people were like, "Oh, that's the coolest thing." Like, I mean, and I was a kid, so I was like, "He's playing a saw. I thought that was a tool." What? And then there were other people who were just like, "Oh my gosh, again!" Like they couldn't stand the sound. So
That's funny.
yeah, mixed reviews. All right, and then my last one.
Well, we ought to just forget it. Just
one more church story. So when I was in high school, we went to a Southern Baptist church and they had a living Christmas tree. Now, in case you're wondering what it is it's a giant apparatus that stretches from the floor to the vaulted ceilings, and you've got people standing on this thing all the way up to the tippy top. So the person
So
on the
it's
top
not
is
a
like
tree.
100 feet in the air. No, it's not a real tree.
well, but it's shaped like a tree.
It is made out of people, basically. It's
With
tree
humans.
shaped. Everybody's
That's right.
wearing green. And let me just say, my dad, the first year my dad was there, he was just like, "Oh, that's a fire hazard." I don't know, but seriously, I don't know how they were probably breaking some fire codes every year that they did it, but
Oh
it was like
my
their biggest
goodness.
production. They did it every year.
So you could say they were really branching out in new directions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right, Adam, what do you got for us?
Well, I have nothing that will compete with any of that. Yeah, I don't have much really. I mean, standard issue stuff. We have a big concert at the church that I went to when we lived in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
In the last couple of years, my daughter was a soloist, so
That's
that
kind of
was
a big
really
deal.
lovely. Yeah,
So-
so pretty basic actually.
Yeah, so let me tell you a story about your church that you went to in Colorado Springs. So because I
would love to
went
hear
to I went to Adam's church. Fun fact: went to Adam's church when I was a little boy, and when
And actually grew up with my wife, right?
actually grew up with your wife. That is correct. She was very nice
Weird.
and much cooler than I was. But when I would sing in the children's choir, and my favorite thing was every Christmas, you'd sing your concert. It was very pretty. We did great. And then everybody would gather in sort of this fellowship hall type thing where the adults would talk. There would be people dressed as elves handing out candy canes. And a friend of mine and I really had a competition to see just how many candy canes we could get. So we would just wander around and hit all the elves up for candy canes, sometimes sneaking our hands into the basket, taking the candy cane. There were years where I had like 40 little tiny candy canes that I took home. It was
Explains a great deal,
awesome.
actually.
Well, that raises a good question. How many elves were at the nativity?
I appreciate
those
you filling in
Presbyterians.
for my dad in this moment.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we better get going with this
Wow.
conversation. This is a terrible segue. Speaking of candy canes,
Let's talk about video games.
Let's talk about video games. So you probably already kind of figured this out from the introduction, but Fortnite became this billion-dollar game through in-game purchases. The most expensive Fortnite in-game purchase that I've heard of is something called a Galaxy skin, which on its release cost $1,250.
So
$1,250.
you could only get it, though, if you had the Samsung Galaxy phone.
Right.
So really what you were paying for is you were actually just paying for the phone.
Well, it's complicated.
It is
right?
complicated.
Because
It's probably
you bought
more
the
than
skin
that,
and you get
but-
the phone for free.
But
I think it's a both and situation.
it's a both and situation, but they're still selling these Galaxy
Yeah.
skins, right?
But that's not really how Fortnite is making its money.
so tell us about
not-
how it is.
Basically, for most gamers who are making in-game purchases, it's small things. It's not, some
Sure.
big flashy skin. Now, yes, you can buy certain skins for your weapons or whatever you're carrying or armor or whatever. But the most of the in-game purchases on most of these games are either an exchange real money for in-game money, or where you're purchasing directly certain little things.
Right.
And I mean, most of these purchases will be maybe $1 or $2 or
99
$5. But the thing is, the way they make their money is when you stop and think about how they make their money versus a game sale. Mm-hmm. If you just make a game that has no in-game purchases,
Right.
and you sell it for $60. Say you come out as a fairly new company and you're keeping your expenses down, and you sell 1 million copies. 1 million copies sounds like a lot.
And at $60 a pop, it is a lot.
And so you're ending up with $60 million, and say you spent $10 million to make it, you make a good profit. That's great. But the reason that these free games are such a dominant model is because what they do is they say, no, everybody can have it. Not just 1 million people who buy it. You all can have it. And so then they get hundreds of millions of people playing these games. And all you have to do is have a certain percentage of that, spend a couple of bucks. Next thing you know, you're making $1 billion.
Well, I know that a game that both Adam and I play quite a bit, Pokemon Go,
Yeah.
is based on that same model, right? And
Yeah.
Adam, I won't ask you how much money you have spent on Pokemon Go, but you're pretty aware of those transactions.
Can I ask,
Oh,
what do you
I am
even
and I'm not.
purchase in Pokemon Go?
That's a good question. So
I'm a little curious.
they give you. This is what they do, and Adam, you can fill in the gaps because I'm sure you know better than I do. But
I do.
get these. You can buy coins. You can use those in-game coins to buy Pokeballs or more storage for your Pokemon. You
Okay.
also have a chance to buy special things. Like they have these running contests essentially where you can catch special Pokemon if you pay $5.99 to participate. Yeah.
Okay.
So
And a lot of them also, and not just Pokemon Go, but a lot of these games, these in-game purchases are sort of like shortcuts. When you stop and
Right.
think about it, the games are built so that if you don't spend anything, you can still play. You just have to grind longer. You have to work at it, work at it, and work at it. Whereas most people that are in the midst of that say, well, if I only spend $5, I can just jump ahead.
Well, let me just say this. So, just speaking of, having to grind for stuff. So, World of Warcraft, there was a character called, I think it's pronounced Zuzo. But basically, it was a level 70, at the time, it was a maxed out level character, had all the best gear in the game. And the owner of that character sold it to another person for $9,500.
goodness gracious.
So that's going from the few dollar sales up to the mega.
Yeah.
And so the person who created the character, they probably didn't spend anything to make that character. They spent time to make that character. They probably invested hundreds, possibly even thousands of hours building that character up. And then they were like, okay, I'm going to get about 10 grand for this. And, so, and that doesn't always happen. I mean, you have to it's not like anybody can just go in and grind at the game, because like you also have to consider things like, subscription fees, the cost of the base game, so it's not like, this is a market where you're going to make a ton of money or something, but that is something that people have done.
But sometimes these things can be like money-making enterprises, right? I mean, I'm thinking about in the game The Sims or SimCity.
One of those Sims games.
Yeah, there was a guy who created the entire city of Amsterdam.
Oh, that wasn't
Oh,
Sims.
that was Second City.
Second
City, I
Life.
remember.
Second
Life is what it's called. It's an
Yeah, Second
online, massive multiplayer online role-playing game.
Yeah, it was a game that started like 20 years ago, and everybody just went into it to spend time and walk around. But you could build things.
But when you think about it, I mean, this guy built Amsterdam.
Amsterdam,
Sold it for
yeah.
$50,000.
$50,000. Now, there's nothing, Adam, like that in Pokemon Go.
I hope
No, but I think that the logic is not dissimilar from, when you listen to the money gurus, they say every day when you stop at Starbucks and pay $5 for a cup of coffee, or 6 or 7 or whatever it is these days, over time that adds up, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not disciplined, if you're not paying attention, and if you sign up a child and they're like, hey, can you put your credit card in so that I can, buy stuff every now and then? If you're not paying attention, it's easy for those little 99-cent transactions. And most of the ones on Pokemon Go, which is what I'm most familiar with, are 99 cents. And so,
Yeah.
it's
And it
99
doesn't
cents,
feel
right?
like
And
much,
so
right?
The psychology of it is such that even for an adult, it doesn't feel like much.
Right.
But like Pokemon occasionally has all-day events, and once a year they have an event that goes for an entire weekend. And if you play one of these games, and as we were talking about, what those microtransactions do is that they're an accelerant, right?
Yeah.
They speed up the process of getting the best stuff.
Yeah.
And Paul, I suspect you and I represent two different poles on the Pokemon Go experience, in that
I
don't
buy
even want to
any-
know how much money we've spent, but you haven't spent a penny.
I haven't spent a penny.
Yeah.
And we've been playing probably a fairly similar amount of time. And my guess is not to like shame you. I'm farther along than you are, and you have more money in your bank account. So, I mean, everybody wins here. But I think kids especially, where it's a little bit, or a lot insidious, is if you're not keeping a tight rein on that, your kids may not have any concept at all of how much money they're spending. And that's where it's sort of like back in the day when you had to pay for texts. I mean, that seems like a long time ago now. And, parents would get a $500 phone bill because their kid went wild texting. It can be like that. And
that's a really good comparison to when we had to pay for text, because I remember when I had to pay for text, and of course I was on a prepaid phone, so I had to go to the store, purchase my little card to get to put the money onto my phone, and then it would be gone like that, and it was just so I remember that. But I think about, it feels like it happens most with games that you can access on your phone or your tablet.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
those are where you're going to find the games with these microtransactions where, you don't, if you've got your credit card hooked up to the phone, all your kid has to do, and if you don't have any kind of password protection where it's, because you can set it up to where you have to enter your password every time, or maybe you only have to do it once and then it stays there for an hour,
It's the
and
same.
so
It's the same as buying games. I mean, not just the microtransactions.
Over
but,
and over and over
If
again.
you go to Nintendo, for example, they encourage you to just connect a card there.
Yeah.
So whenever you want that game, you just go
click a
beep,
button.
and there it is.
Just so easy.
Right.
So
But that's as Adam was saying, that's the thing that adds up. And in fact, if there's one thing that we can tell parents right now that are thinking, oh, I wonder if I should be worried about this in terms of the little transactions in the games.
The answer is yes.
Yes. The answer is yes. And one thing that they should never do is connect their card to the system.
That's
Do
a
not,
really good point.
As Emily was saying, make sure that it's an individual transaction each time.
I mean, and yeah, it's a hassle to have to sit there and enter in your card. Like, you're like, okay, we've talked about this game. We've discussed it. We are going to let you get this game. Let's go get the credit card. You put in your information, you download the game, but then you remove the credit card, because if you don't, then your kids don't realize, like, when you see a button that says get this now, if you see a button, like, I think about my nephew. He loves Minecraft loves its microtransactions, because you don't buy, it doesn't give you the $sign in the game. What it does is you buy Minecraft coins.
Right, you buy currency.
Yes, you buy in-game currency using real money, and then you spend your coins. So for him, he's sitting there and he's going, Mom, this pumpkin patch thing, it's 310 coins. Okay, well, what is that? I did the math on this, you guys. So you can buy like 3,500 coins for $20. So when you break it down, right. 310 coins, what is it? It's $1.77. Maybe one time, that's okay. You're like, okay, you know what? $1.77, go for it, But you're not just buying, you're not just going to buy the $1.77 thing. No, you have to spend $20 to get the coins, which then they can spend. So really what you're paying for is whatever coin amount that you're buying, and that can add up.
It's really interesting, because as we talk about some of these huge dollar amounts for some of the skins and stuff that you can buy, that's one issue. But when we're talking about kids, it is these little tiny transactions. Ones. And when we're talking, I don't think I really realized this until we started talking. These microtransactions are huge in these really kid-friendly games.
Yeah.
The games that kids
and
are playing.
Casual gaming. I mean, like we were talking about, this is, you've got the big heavy hitters, whether it's Fortnite or Minecraft or Roblox or Pokemon Go, but all of these games, I played a silly game called Panda Pop, which was just, throwing colored balls to try to get to the next level. It's kind of Tetris in reverse, right? And if you can't clear a level, like if you play a level 8 or 9 or 10 times, you're like, you know what? I don't care. I'm spending the money to get the Super Bowl to get to the next level.
To get to the next level.
Made that way. I mean, I don't want to sound like a pearl clutching grandmother here, but they're kind of like drug dealers, right? They get you hooked, but to get the next high, in this case, a high score, you have to spend the money to do it.
And getting that high score is a high, right?
Well, I just think about, it's not even necessarily about like, oh, you have to get to the next level or whatever. A lot of these free-to-play games come with advertisements. That's another way that they make their money. And so you can pay to get rid of the advertisements, And so there's another microtransaction. I feel like that's actually maybe a pitfall for adults more so than kids. I have been tempted so many times, but usually what I wind up doing is just getting rid of the game, because I'm like, no, I'm not paying money to get rid of advertisements to play a dumb game. But so I do have a level of self-control.
But they're all built that way.
Oh yeah, they're all
let's
built
face
that
it,
way.
they're purposely built that way to draw you in, so that you can get that endorphin hit,
right?
And you can go, oh, let's keep going, and it all starts with something that's free,
Well,
and our brains tell us, ooh, free. That's the best kind of game, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually going to be the unusually self-controlled person, if you're playing a game you like that you want to advance in, who doesn't at some point say, oh man, I don't, I'm putting the credit card in and I'm going for it, And once you do it, like, I don't think we spent any money on Pokemon Go for a couple of years. I think we played quite a long time for free. But once you start using those accelerants that you pay for, you get desensitized to it. And again,
and
I'm an adult.
And actually, there are some games where you can't even advance unless you pay.
Right.
I think that's another key point.
Well, on that point, I think about there was the Kim Kardashian game that came out, like, it's probably been close maybe not 10 years, but it's been at least 5 years now. But I remember when that game came out that a lot of parents got really angry because it was so easy to just because you need these gems to progress, but you have to pay for them. Like, you could wait, I think, but it was like you had to wait forever to do it. So these kids, especially adults, were buying it and playing the game, but these kids were doing it. And even what I remember most from that experience was that Kim Kardashian's own daughter was playing it, and she spent something like $1,000 before her parents caught on and were like, "Oh wait, what are you doing?" You know. And there was like a whole thing where her dad was like upset because it wasn't just that game; it was like a bunch of different games on her phone that she was just hitting the button and just buying more things for all these games. And when he realized, like, with the bill, he was like, this is awful. Why are we letting these games, target kids like this? And then, at the same time, her mom was sitting there, making I think it was like 200 million is what I read off the app of other people's kids doing that exact same thing.
That's crazy. Adam, we'll give you the last word in this conversation.
Well, in some ways, I think this just brings in all sorts of trends, that we have game designers who are creating things that are intentionally engineered to be addictive. They're aimed at kids. You throw money in there, and it's not a great combination. And like so many things that we talk about, it's just our job as parents to be aware of what's happening.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And to be able to say no.
And to be able to say no to your kid and to yourself.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not sure which one is harder. They can both be harder than maybe we want to admit.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And as we've learned in this conversation, the world of video games can be weird and wonderful and amazingly lucrative and amazingly costly. I think the advice of not connecting your credit card to these games is probably a very, very important one. Before we move on to our next segment, where we're going to be talking with some folks about the best Christmas pageant ever, let's turn our attention to another sort of game.
All right, men, I'm not gonna mince words. That was a lousy first half. Lousy. Some of you look like you never held a football before. Tom, you're supposed to throw that ball to our team, right? And Dozer, your helmet goes on the other way. Don't you boys know what's at stake? Your pride, your scholarships, and don't forget our team's very own copy of Plugged In's Becoming a Screen-Savvy Family. Oh, I got your attention now, don't I? Yeah, you heard me. The winner gets that incredible book loaded with a great game plan to keep you and your family from getting sacked by entertainment. With it, you can run toward the movie theater with confidence. You can pass on those ill-advised social media posts. You can kick bad technology choices to the curb. And winning this game is about the only way you can get your hands on this precious, precious book. Oh, sure, you could buy it, but what fun is that? Or, I guess if you send a gift of any amount to Plugged In, that might do the trick. And I'm not talking about gifts you've been throwing the other team either, Tom. Check the show notes and find out how. Okay, men, we gotta go out on the field and we gotta show them what we're made of. Let's win ourselves a copy of Becoming a Screen-Savvy Family and make our mothers proud. No, Dozer. The other way.
Thank you, Mr. Hoos. I think I've mentioned on the Plugged In show that one of my very favorite family traditions is actually reading aloud the best Christmas pageant ever by Barbara Robinson. It's become sort of this thing in our household where every year, even though my kids are all grown, we still read it out loud. It's funny, it's sweet, it has some great messages about the true meaning of Christmas. So when I heard that the Kingdom Story Company was going to be collaborating with Lionsgate on a movie based on the book, I was excited and a little bit nervous because you just never know how these things, when you have a favorite book, you never know how they're going to treat it in the movie. Well, I think they did a pretty good job, and I'm excited to be able to talk with a couple of the folks who are behind the production. And here's what we talked about. I'm here with Pete Holmes, who's one of the stars of the new movie Best Christmas Pageant Ever, which is based on one of my very favorite books, I got to be honest with you. So it's a real thrill to have you here to talk about it a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about how this process began for you?
Yeah, Dallas Jenkins sent me the script along with a note, which about how much he wanted me to be in the movie, which I'll tell you, that's not normally how things go in Hollywood. Even if someone does offer you a role, there's not like a heartfelt note about how he, like you, was obsessed with the book and has been trying for like 10 years to get it made, and how he pictured me in it, and Judy Greer was in it, and that is not normal. So I came into this warm family movie with a very warm kind of family feeling. So it was that way throughout. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I was going to ask you because making a movie, as you well know, can be a real grind, but it felt the process was a pretty comfortable family type of environment.
Well, yeah, it was both. And no actor really has a leg to stand on when it comes to complaining. The only thing that's a grind about it is waiting. Like some days, and this is probably boring, but I remember there was one day where all I did that day was I was waiting around. You're in your trailer and you're there for like maybe 7-8 hours, just kind of in a little motorhome, basically, like half of one. And then I got called to set. Someone handed me a baby. I smiled at the baby. I handed it back. And they said, cut, and I was wrapped for the day.
You are kidding me. Wow.
Yeah, so it was like 8 hours. Look, I'm not complaining. I'm just letting you know that every job has its own version of grind. I wouldn't trade that grind for any other type of grind.
Yeah.
I don't mind waiting, but yeah, that is where it becomes a job and not just play. But the part that is play is when you're on set. Yeah. And when I was with Dallas and Judy and of course Molly and the kids in particular, I love working with kids. It was very warm and easy and fun.
Yeah. I know that this is a very, very funny movie, which is not something you typically see in can I say Christian film? I think that Christian movies have a hard time with comedy. I know you're very familiar with that world. So how do you bring that comedy into a film? Obviously, the script had a huge part of it, but I know it has to be more than that.
No, you're right. Well, I went to a Christian college and I was on the improv team there. So there's almost an advantage when it was called Sweaty Tooth Madmen. They're still going. At Gordon College, to give them a shout out. And there almost was an advantage to being in a faith community because everyone knows there's more sensitivities. Right. Let's just call them sensitivities. And sometimes it's fun. There's more lines to scooch up next to, but still keep it in bounds. And that can be really thrilling for an audience to feel seen and considered. And I think that's what this movie does with humor. To give you a strange example, it's like, remember when Howard Stern was on regular radio and he had all the limitations? Mm-hmm. He was kind of, some people, I've never been a huge Stern fan, but like people have been like, that was the best Stern because he had NBC breathing down his neck and he had to be really creative. Then he goes to satellite radio, and now you can say whatever you want. And I think even he spoke to how it sort of lost some of the tension and the aliveness. Yeah. And in the strangest way, being funny within parameters can sometimes be a little bit more exciting. That's not always true. I think you and I both know that sometimes faith-based music, faith-based comedy, faith-based everything can kind of suffer. It gets like a type of paralysis.
Yep.
I don't think that's what happened here. I think they made a movie that will be funny to everyone. And that's not easy to do, but that has a lot to do with Dallas and Judy.
Yeah. Yeah, so talented. Yeah, I know we're out of time. I know you have other things to do, so thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate spending a few minutes with us.
It was my pleasure, Paul. Thank you very much.
I'm here with Kevin Downs and Dallas Jenkins. Thank you so much for joining us. We get to talk about what I think is a really fun movie, the best Christmas pageant ever. So,
great, thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about kind of how this came about.
Yeah. Well, I have this book with me. This is the actual copy of the book that my wife brought home 20 years ago. And I was reading it to my kids, and the first few chapters I'm laughing. It's very witty. It's enjoying it. I'd read it as a kid, but hadn't really remembered it much. I get to the end, the last few chapters, and I am crying so hard, I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't keep going. And so my wife's like, all right, and she takes the book from me, and she starts crying. She can't get through it. So I take it back, and we would just exchange the book back and forth as we tried to read it to our kids. And when I closed the book, I said, I have to make this movie. Google, I found out who had the rights. It was already with another studio, another director, and for 15 years, I was like praying every week. I had a reminder on my calendar that would pop up once a week to pray for this project. And I'd like to say that I had the maturity of saying, whatever your will, God, I'll be happy with. I just hope the movie is good. No, I was praying, God, don't let anyone else do this. Let me make it. I will follow your will, but please make sure your will is for me to do this. And finally, because of the success of The Chosen, my show, the rights holders had gotten the rights back, and they chose me to make the film. And I remember just being so excited. And I remember telling Kevin Downs about it because we go way back. And I said, what do you think of this project? I'd love to do this. And he's like, my family loves this book too. And so now just talking to you about this movie, the fact that we're ready to deliver this to the world is in of itself a dream come true and a calling fulfilled.
It is super exciting to see it come to the big screen because it's one of my family favorites too. We read it every single year. My kids are grown. We still read it. And yeah, I get weepy at the end. I totally do. This is clearly a very different project from what you've been doing with The Chosen. I would imagine, and I know that The Chosen does inflect a lot of humor into the workings as well. But this is a comedy, really. And that's not something that Christians are known for doing very well with. Did that bring any special challenges with it?
Yeah, and I'll let you talk about that too, because if you guys choose which movies you're going to do and which movies Lionsgate's going to distribute, Kevin and I have been making faith-based projects for 25 years, and the number of comedies that have worked. I think
right.
too many. I've made a couple myself that I'm proud of, but it's like. It just doesn't tend to be successful, or at least to land. And yeah, this one, I just think the writing of the book, the story itself is just so good.
Yeah.
And over the years, I have kind of honed my skills as a filmmaker, and comedy has become something that I just really love, even in The Chosen. And so, yes, we knew it would be a challenge, but sometimes something's just so good you can't not do it. But I don't know, from your perspective, if you were at the studio, ever thought, well, this is different from what we normally do, but we think it's going to work.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think was even the surprise is when you can walk that tightrope as a filmmaker between comedy and drama and deliver both in the same hour-and-a-half presentation. I think the dramatic elements of this film are going to surprise people tremendously.
Yeah.
As they're very real, they're very sincere. The casting was so excellent. This guy behind the camera directing these actors in a way to get us to come along in this journey as an audience and not just laugh, but cry, and then to want to talk about it, and then to want to experience it all over again.
Yeah.
My wife, who is obviously a big fan of the book, and with all the films that we make, she is now done with rough cuts. She wants to watch it at the premiere, but she told me last week she goes, hope you don't mess this one up, because she's got high hopes for it. And my opinion is, and it's hard to do in movies when you're adapting really successful books, I think this movie elevates the book, and I think families will definitely be pleased with that outcome.
But if it didn't have the heart, if it didn't have the story of Jesus told in this way, it's just a silly Christmas comedy, which is great, and I love good Christmas comedies. Yeah. But I'm not going to spend the resources and the energy and the pain that it takes to make a movie over the course of a year or two just for something that anyone else can do. This is, I think, a special story that points people towards Jesus.
Yeah, I think as a family, you're going to have a heartfelt, even with young children, you're going to have a heartfelt conversation about the nativity story because it's told in such a way that they can clearly understand it. And I think that's going to be something that's really encouraging, and we're anticipating kind of seeing the feedback of how that unfolds with audience members.
Well, I'm super excited for this movie to land in theaters. I think it's going to be an enjoyable watch for so many families. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
Well, that was interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Conversation.
It was a fun conversation. So, yeah, and I thought the movie was really nicely done. I thought that the cast that they got did a really good job bringing some of these characters to life. They kept with the spirit of the book, and they kept a lot of the original book in there, which I really appreciated.
The trailer looks great. I've seen the trailer.
Yeah. All right, and now it is time for our game, and this time we are playing Name That Movie. And just to throw in a little best Christmas pageant ever flavor to it, it needs to be a movie that includes, in some manner, a barnyard animal. Doesn't have to star a barnyard animal, but it has to include a barnyard animal. So, with that...
So, Paul, I have to confess, when I did a search on movies with barnyard animals, there really was only one, so I guess we're all going to do the same movie.
It can be widely interpreted.
Okay, good.
I mean,
I didn't pick that movie.
farms and barnyards can have lots of different animals, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
You can have spiders, you can have lizards, you can have all sorts of stuff. So, Adam, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah.
Since
in
you
this
only have one.
Yes, I only have one. I'm not picking that one, though. So I have gone in a different direction. I don't think you'll struggle too much with this. In this 1943 classic, we meet a furry friend who would later develop a peculiar talent for finding people not named Timmy who might or might not have fallen down a well. And this was 10-year-old Elizabeth Taylor's second film. Also, this film involves Scotland, which is where I got this bonnet, flat cap, or newspaper boy hat.
Yeah.
Depending on which internet source you want to use. Okay, name that movie.
Lassie.
All right. Right, but which one? See?
The one that you said from 1940s.
Lassie Goes
No, I know.
Home.
Were there
You're so-
numerous
you're so
Lassies
close,
in
Paul.
1940?
Lassie.
there
Lassie
were.
Come Home?
Lassie Come Home. Emily is our winner.
Very good. Was that just
Yes.
a guess?
No, I was pretty sure it was called Lassie Come Home, but I think what threw me off is that I was thinking about I think it came out in the 90s. There was a remake of that movie, though.
94.
So, and that one was
There have
just
been
called...
multiple remakes.
Yeah, and I remember that version, and that one was just called Lassie, but
So-
the phrase is always Lassie Come Home.
Lassie
so.
Come
Right.
Home. Yes,
Yeah.
and I do
So
like the hat.
Thank you. I'm going to keep it on now. I did a little research on this, and we all remember Timmy falling down the well. Timmy never fell down the well in 571 episodes of the TV
He
show. It
never fell
started
down
in
the well?
1954. No, there was a guy who fell down the well, but it was not Timmy. But it's a great example of how we all remember something
Yeah.
that didn't ever happen.
It was more of
Mandela
a, it was
effect.
more of
There
a
you go.
joke, I think.
Yeah,
It
interesting.
was a joke.
All
Yeah.
right, Emily, you're up next.
All right. I'm trying to. Sorry, I didn't think about this one ahead of time enough, but a
I can wait on you.
a porky mammal proves that even
Charlotte's
the most
Web.
no, not Charlotte's Web. Proves
Babe Pig in the City.
Oh, just hush.
not in the city. He got it. It's Babe.
Oh, man.
I'm not even
Adam,
gonna
what are
finish.
you doing?
I'm sure that this doesn't say the right thing about me, but I have an affinity for stories about porky mammals. So you had me at porky mammal.
He's also very competitive. So, he's got to jump in there first.
Got to jump in there. It's the hat.
Right. I forgot there were actually 2 movies that involved pigs. So there you go.
3.
Somebody can do the other one now.
All right, Mr. Hoos.
Okay. All right. I'll use one about pigs.
Charlotte's Web.
A singing pig works his heart out to save a failing theater.
Oh, that's Sing.
Yes.
But he's not a pig. No,
It's a she.
one of them's a pig, and two of them are pigs actually.
Yeah.
One's sort of a
But the main guy,
dancing singing
the
pig.
main guy trying to save the theater isn't
a koala
pig.
bear.
Well, no, he's a
But-
koala bear, but I'm saying they all came together in this competition. I probably shouldn't have said singing because that gave it away.
Well, yeah.
A performing pig.
A performing pig.
Oh, nice.
A
alliteration.
And an elephant.
performing porky pig.
2 pigs,
So
an
go ahead.
elephant, and a porcupine walk into a theater.
Paul, can you go ahead and do Charlotte's Web now?
All right, we'll not
Charlotte's
do,
Web.
We will not do Charlotte's Web. I'm sorry, Adam. You are wrong.
All right, Star Wars.
That's right.
It has lots of barnyard animals in there. There's just different types of
Banthas.
them. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're in the bar.
Tons.
When an adventurous chick decides to investigate a nearby factory, her mother and a cadre of her friends leave their island paradise.
Chicken Run,
Yes.
the second one, but I
Dawn
don't
of the Nugget.
Dawn of the Nugget.
There it is.
Very
Yes, yes.
good. Very good. You know what, Adam?
Also,
I think
really great use of cadre. I mean, that's
Cadre.
when I knew what it was. I'm like, cadre, that has
Really?
to be Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget.
cadre gave it away, not chicken. Cadre. That's pretty funny.
Not chicken.
You know, I think that that hat of yours is sort of your thinking cap. I am not going to judge, but I do think that you probably, if we were keeping score, you might have won.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Especially since we're not wearing hats. So,
yeah,
right.
it's true. Well,
That would make you men without hats.
and women.
Without a hat.
Yeah.
And they did a song called Safety Dance in 1983.
man, this show is going off the rails. We better end it right now. Right now, thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of The Plugged In Show. We would love to hear from you. Do you have a favorite movie that involves barnyard animals that are
Pigs.
especially pigs? Yes. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what you think about these microtransactions that we find in games. Tell us about your own Christmas traditions. And while you're at it, since Christmas time is coming up, we would love to hear about your very, very favorite Christmas movies. We're certainly going to be talking some about Christmas movies in shows to come, and we would love to include your thoughts on what you think are the best. And no dissing It's a Wonderful Life, because that's really the best. So connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram. Write us a note at team@thepluggedinshows.com, or you can even leave us a message on the Plugged In Show homepage. We would love to hear from you. And be sure to listen next week when we ask a very, very important question: when should I get my kid a cell phone? Listen for that and a lot more on the next episode of The Plugged In Show.